Florida and said, we got to finish up here before we could go and help others. And of course, thankful that, we did not get any rain off of what just hit Florida, because if it had, it just would have been devastating. And so, of course, the people in Florida dealing with their aftermath right now. And I thought I saw something where they had staged a bunch of people in inside one of the stadiums where the roof came off one of the stadiums. Yeah. And so, so just pray for what's going to happen now down in Florida, what is going to continue to happen up in the mountains, anything that we can do to further that, help in any way. I know there's a lot of organizations around. People ask, and I said, just there's so many you can just find and just drop off stuff too. That I'm of the firm belief, if God's already using somebody in a way, just get on them. So I know Highland's doing stuff. Tabernacle's doing stuff. I think Winkler's doing stuff. Tri-City's doing stuff. There's just so many that it's Highways and Hedges has been sending stuff up there. I think actually they're taking theirs to Winkler's and then sending it up. So there's just so many around. It's just as close as Morganton that there's a lot of just need just around. So just continue to pray in those directions. And
he must be listening to prayer, because they could be getting rain up there. It would have been disaster.
It would have been disaster.
You can think how bad it'd be if you get rain on top of what they got. So they get looking at it.
Yeah, and
prayer's going good.
Prayer, it's just still going to be. This is not going to be a couple weeks and everything's back to normal.
They said Chimney Rock could take 2 years.
Yeah, I know some of the schools up there. They're trying to figure out how they can get fresh water enough to reopen the schools. Whether they may have to drill wells at each school to be able to provide, because the schools can't open until they've got fresh water. And it's just there's so much that is going to have to take place in this unprecedented time. So just to continue to pray for those people that are up there. The linesmen and electricians like Randy, pray for them. Pray for the North Carolina disaster relief. They're up there. Samaritans, so many. And one of the places I help is I do a little school, Cornerstone. It's affiliated with the Counseling Center in Hickory. They are actually providing counseling for the counselors from like Billy Graham and all of Samaritan's Purse that go in to help people, because they're coming back with the trauma of what they're seeing. They're helping to provide counseling. So it's like a cycle, and this is not going to be a short-lived a thing. And people getting back. It's like Randy said, they're basically building roads that no longer have roads to try to get to people and stuff. So let's just continue to pray for that. Continue to pray for Miss Eileen and with her health. I had somebody else, but I can't remember who it was.
So it's going to help them people. It's going to give them $750.
Yeah. It's not going to come. It's not going to come from them. It's going to come from the biggest. It has always been places like North Carolina Disaster Relief, North Carolina Baptist Disaster Relief, Southern Baptist Disaster Relief, Samaritan's Purse. those agencies always provide and stay longer than anybody else. They will be there. You think of the churches that have been devastated. And so let's just continue to lift them up in this time. What other prayer requests do we have that are there?
Pray for the Goebel family.
Yep, Goebbels.
Ken is my friend and lives right out here. Lost his brother last Friday night. So
Yeah.
pray for them.
I think Ruth was supposed to have a CT scan, was it yesterday and today? There was 2 in a row, I know.
Jody sent me something. Let me see. What she sent me. This is from Ruth yesterday. Saw Dr. Dressler today for results of CT scan. There is a pocket of fluid that is causing problems. She set up surgery on Friday to take care of this, ordering a wound vacuum for home use. I think that's still off of, is that her legs or her lungs? I can't remember. I'll double check with that. So just continue to pray for Ruth. I think that may have been the one I was thinking of.
Yeah, I hated his brother real good. His daughter was married to my son.
Okay.
Not now.
Not
Yeah,
now.
yeah.
They had one daughter together.
Yeah. Well, we'll pray for the Goebel family. Losing people is just, it's just, this time there's so much going on. It's just hard to fathom in any way.
The last couple of weeks it's been
Yeah.
really all this stuff going on.
Yeah. Well, let's open up in a word of prayer, and we'll get started in our Proverbs study today. Lord Father, I just want to thank you for this opportunity. Lord, so much is going on around us that we can't just even imagine and even just wrap our heads around all the things that are just happening locally, just around the world, and even just comprehend, God. But we know that when we come to you, we are reminded that you are always at the forefront. And when we rely on you, pray for the Goebel family during their loss. Pray for Brother Randy as he just continues to go out and work and to keep him safe. We pray for so much that's going on in our community that we just need to ask God that you would just, with no other way, just guide us. And we want to just thank you for your words of wisdom that we'll seek today and in this time. And Lord, I ask you to just guide us and direct us. In your name we pray. Amen. We are in Proverbs chapter 1. We're going to look at verses 10 through 19. So verses 1 through 9 are basically just an introduction. Starting here in verse 10 through the end of chapter 9 is Solomon sitting with his son and giving him instructions. They're having a father-son conversation. And they're going to be talking about just a lot of things. And it's like this conversation is going to take place. They're sitting around, they're talking, and I don't know exactly, there's no way to pinpoint, whether this is in Solomon's later days, Solomon's, middle, early, whatever it might be. Whether his son's a teenager and he's trying to help him before he moves out and goes on. I think a lot of what he's talking about, I would tend to say, kind of the younger age. He's trying to teach his son what is going to happen. And Solomon, in this conversation, isn't so much going to start out by saying, son, got a couple things to tell you. You know, they're sitting around just kind of talking. Solomon goes from 0 to 100 miles an hour in one verse. I mean, he don't beat around the bush. I mean, I remember when I was getting ready to go off to college, my dad gave me 2 pieces of advice. And he said, if you ever come home with an earring or a tattoo, don't worry about coming home.
There you go.
And he said, if you get arrested, don't call me or your mother. You know, that's kind of a casual conversation. Solomon goes, son, if sinners are going to entice you, I mean, he just jumps right in. So let me read the verses 10 through 19 and kind of get into this today. Verse 10, my son, if sinners entice you, do not consent. If they say, come with us, let us lie in wait for blood, let us ambush the innocent without reason. Like Sheol, let us swallow them alive, and whole, like those who go down to the pit. We shall find all precious goods. We shall fill our houses with plunder. Throw in your lot among us. We all have one purse. My son, do not walk in the way with them. Hold back your foot from their paths. For their feet run to evil, and they make haste to shed blood. For in vain is a net spread in the sight for any bird. But these men lie in wait for their blood. They set ambush for their own lives. Such are the ways of everyone who is greedy for unjust gain. It takes away the life of its possessors. I want to see a couple things. First of all, the proposal of sinful man. He comes and he says, the sinful man gives out an invitation. He said he gives out an invitation. He says, son, if sinners entice you, this is a bold invitation to sin. I mean, he just tells them, they're going to say, hey, come with us. It's like you knew the wrong crowd to hang out with, and you were warned, don't go hang out with the crowd. And it's like you knew what that crowd was, and Solomon's telling his son, you know who they are, don't go with them. Solomon gives us a very direct warning of the invitation. The word sinners is the same word we use in like Romans 3:23. For all have sinned. It's the idea of a mark, missing the mark, to stumble or to fall. It's the same word in here as it is in Romans, right? It's the same word. We talk about missing the mark. In context of these verses is the willful choice, but does not necessarily mean that we're going to carry it out. It refers to not only the action, but the thoughts that come along with it. It can refer to thoughts and deeds. So in verse 10, he says, the world and the sinner say, come on, you got to come. They want to lead down the broad road of destruction. Right? This is different from Revelation 22 when the Spirit says, come. See, here, the broad road, they're extending that invitation to everybody. They want everybody to come. Sooner or later, every person must decide on that invitation. We know that as Christians. We know that every person has to decide which path we're going to lead on. Proverbs will tell us later that it is better to choose a lonely path through life than one that will end up, according to Proverbs chapter 5, in utter ruin. I think there is a classic biblical example of a young man who refused the invitation to sin, and that's Joseph. Now, we did a study on the life of Joseph. Let me just go through a couple things, right? He was totally abandoned, sold into slavery, sent to a foreign land. By sheer force and personality, he achieved success in Egypt. Then enticement came. How powerful it was. Now he was a lonely slave. The moral climate of Egypt was utterly worldly. Immorality was rampant. The offer was his for the taking. Nevertheless, Joseph was empathetic to no invitation. The temptress had no reply to the argument. And it was a dark time, but later he overcame it. I mean, there's a story there. We see that the sinful man gives us provocation. That is, what we see is a swift unmasking of the true nature of sin. He says, if they say, come with us, let us lie in wait for blood, let us ambush the innocent without reason. This is not just, hey, we're going to go have fun on a Friday night and, we're going to go, cruise up and down and, all these things. I mean, this is like, they know what they're going, they have a plan for trouble. I mean, there is no attempt to disguise this idea. Or to violence. They don't disguise anything. They put it out there for everybody to see. Look at verses 11 through 13. So come with us, let us lie in wait for the blood, let us ambush the innocent without reason. Like Sheol, let us swallow them alive, and the whole, like those who go down in the pit, we'll find all precious goods, we shall fill our houses with plunder. I mean, this is a murder proposition. Like, they're like, we're just going to go kill some people and take their stuff. I mean, it's just the way it is. And if you look at these verses, it says, let us. It is repeated 3 times. If you go back to Genesis 11, the policy of Nimrod and building the Tower of Babel, Solomon jumped into the depths of sin. Sin, as we know it, does not have an incubation period. It's not like you get a little bit and it starts to grow. It's not like, I don't know another way to describe it. It's not like a tumor or cancer cells that start small and then begin to divide and build. This goes from nothing to 100 really fast. You go back in Scripture, right? The very first person born after Adam and Eve, the very first person born kills his younger brother. I mean, it wasn't like the idea of murder introducing into society took generations to come down the road. I mean, it wasn't like somebody thought, I think today I'll kill somebody. And this was, years of generation. This was like Adam and Eve had a son. They had another son. They got older. First one got jealous of the second one, so he killed him. I mean, that was it. We understand that. So Solomon, before he writes even a dozen verses with the problem of full-grown sin, he just jumps right into it. I think I missed a few. In verse 13 through 14, we shall find all precious goods. We shall fill our houses with plunder. Throw in your lot among us. We will have one purse. He says money. Y'all know who, oh my gosh, his name just went out of my mind. Bernie Madoff. Right? Bernie Madoff is forever associated with one of the biggest Ponzi schemes in America. You know, but it wasn't just like, that's people like there. Y'all remember how many people here in Catawba County got hit by the guy carrying out the Ponzi scheme here in Catawba County? Do you know that, so he was a member of Mountain View at the time. Mountain View helped try to restore some of that from money that he had given to the church out of stolen money. I mean, it hit people. It's the idea that it's going to come easily. Right? I mean, nobody is immune, to that. Secondly, look at the dangers of sinful man. Look at verse 15 through 19. My son, do not walk in the way with them. Hold back your foot from their paths. For their feet run to evil, and they make haste to shed blood. For in vain is a net spread in the sight of any bird. But these men lie in wait for their own blood. They set ambush for their own lives. Such are the ways of everyone who is greedy for unjust gain. It takes away the life of its possessors. I want to say this is a word of warning. Because look at the verse. He says there, my son, do not walk in the way with them. Hold back your foot from their paths, for their feet run to evil. It's the idea of feet. See, the idea here is this. He says in verse 15, do not walk in the way with them. Hold back your foot from their path. You know what they say when we have flooding, roads are flooded? If you see a flooded road, what? Turn around. Don't drown. Right? Don't try to drive through. Because what looks calm could quickly draw you away. Right? It's that idea. What he's trying to describe here is he says, don't even put a foot on that path, because that water is moving so quickly that it's going to sweep you up and take you away. It's not even that you're going to wade out, right? When they talk about rip currents down in the ocean. Most people who drown in rip currents is because they're trying to swim and work against it. They say if you get caught in a rip current, just let it ride its way out, and then you can swim out. But this is the same thing. He's describing that the foot, even the foot, you're going to get caught up. You're going to get swept away. I was watching this somewhere in Florida during the hurricane. It must have been like an airport. It's like this huge hangar. And they had opened the hangar doors just a little bit to see you could literally see the wind of the hurricane that just came through. It was amazing. But they were standing way back because they knew if they stood close to the door, one thing could just suck somebody right out. And that's what he's trying to describe here. He says, listen, don't walk in the way with them. Hold back your foot from their paths, for their feet run to evil. That their feet have already been swept away, and they're just running with it. They're going with it. Solomon, I think, is a very close reference here to Psalms chapter 1, verse 1. It says this, how blessed is the man who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked, nor stands in the path of sinners, nor sits in the seat of scoffers. See, the psalmist there says, listen, the man who is blessed doesn't even walk with the counsel of the wicked. He even goes on, the psalmist says, you don't even stand in the path. Because if you stand in the path, you're going to get run over. You know, it's the way it is. We know Matthew 7, 13 and 14. Enter through the narrow gate, for the gate is wide and the way is broad that leads to destruction, and many will enter there. For the gate is small and the way is narrow that leads to life, but few will find it. There are two ways to run through history. One path through Cain and the other through Abel. Think about that. The path that we are on is either Cain or Abel. Cain runs via the judgment of the flood, past the Tower of Babel, by the way of the murder of Christ, through the lake of fire. It deals with the way of the world. Abel runs through Seth, Melchizedek, Abraham, David, Christ, goes through Gethsemane to Golgotha, all the way to glory. Its path is listed in Hebrews chapter 11. I mean, it's that path that we take. So when we talk about evil in verse 16, for their feet run to evil, we see the idea of the wicked, meaning the breakup of all that's good. In Genesis, God responded to sin with a holocaust, once with fire and once with a flood and once with a fire. First one, Noah. Second one, Lot. We know the story of Lot, right? I like this piece of land. I'm a little too far away, so I'm going to move a little closer. Now I'm going to turn my tent towards the city. You know what? I think I'll just go on in the city. And then I think I'll offer up my daughters as a sacrifice. You know, I mean, it's just the way it is. You know what? Those days have returned. Verse 17 and 18, there's a word of wisdom. 17 through 19. For in vain is a net spread in the sight of any bird. So there are two ways to look at this proverb. Okay? One is that spreading the net is not a vain procedure, because although the birds see the net being spread, they will still fly into it. The proverb warns those tempted to follow others into life of sin that the net has been spread for their destruction. In other words, they are fools if they disregard the warning. So, you see the net spread. the birds fly into it. They know it's there, they're going to fly into it. It's the same way with people. That we look at it, we see it, and go, well, I guess everybody else is flying into it. I guess I'll fly into it too. Two, another way, is the spreading of the net is useless because the birds see the snare and fly away. The proverb warns those who are tempted that they will be all more culpable if, in spite of the warning, they continue in their lawlessness. It's like everybody sees the sign. Bridge out ahead. Bridge out ahead. Everybody sees the sign. Everybody knows the bridge is out. But we go, I don't think it's out anymore. And we just keep on going. That's the way it is. You know, it's the warning signs, right? It's the warning signs that we don't pay attention to. You know, sometimes, you know, I haven't seen it in a while, but, you know, sometimes you would have like parking garages or parking lots, they would have those like spike strips. So you go forward, but you can't back up, right? And it says, do not back up. Right? Or do not enter this way. Sure enough, somebody says, I'm going that way. Yesterday I was on my way down to Huntersville. I was on 77, which is always traffic. Always traffic. And it wasn't stopped, it was just moving slowly, you know, kind of thing. It was still where it's kind of like the 2 lanes, wasn't where it kind of widens out. And I was in there, it's just kind of, I mean, we were probably doing 35. I mean, again, we weren't stopped. One of my biggest pet peeves, I have a lot of them, is people who drive on the shoulders in traffic. That try to get around the traffic by driving on the shoulder. I mean, again, I grew up in D.C. Law in D.C. was, you see somebody driving the shoulder, you move your car over to block them so they can't go anywhere. Which aggravates Jody to death when I do that. But it's one of my biggest pet peeves. Saw this car go by. It was just cruising down. You know you're not supposed to do it. Lo and behold, a little bit after that, here comes one of our fantastic state troopers going down right after them. Because it's like people see the signs. Do not drive on the shoulders. They do it anyways. You know, we see the warning signs, and it's like people go, I'm going to ignore that. And that's the idea. It's like we have been warned not to do that. And he says, it's in vain if you see the warning signs, but yet you still try to go through it. Either way, there's going to be injury in there. You know, wild animals are notoriously weary, but in a relaxed area, they can fall to any hunter. Y'all know I don't like certain creatures to come on my property. They would be the slithering kind. There would be other kind. So this has been a while ago. We started noticing at night there was some little animal feces on our back porch. Jody thought they were a snake, which I freaked out. Lo and behold, it wasn't a snake, it was a rat. And it wasn't just a rat. It was a huge old rat. So I went, got me some rat traps. I got me the kind that just snap over. Because if I'm going to take care of it, I'm going to take care of it. Do you know those rats? Man, that was the vein of my existence. That rat would toy with me. And it would get up, try to get up, close to the food, and then it would go away. And then it would come back, and go away. So I thought, I'm going to get you. So I went back to Lowe's. I got me some of them glue traps. And I put the trap with the food on it. I put glue traps all around it because I was going to catch that thing. Well, one day Caleb calls me and he says, there's a mouse in the basement. So Caleb actually, surprisingly, took a container, put it over that baby rat, and left it there. Went home. I figured it was related to that. So I took that little rat out. When I did, the other rats went away. But they looked for the signs. Some rats don't. They just go up, mice, they take the thing, snap. The other ones are out there going, don't go in there. That guy that lives in that house, he's crazy. I've seen him kill snakes. I've seen him, all sorts of things. But they ignore the warning signs. That's the way it is with life. Solomon shows us an observation. Sin is self-destructive. The sin eventually turns on itself. Those who set the traps often fall into the traps. Mice traps are small. And you all know what I'm talking about. You take the little thing, you spring it back, you set the food, you kind of hook it in, right? You got to be careful. Because if that thing comes loose, it's going to come over on you. Rat traps are big. Like I'd have a pair of pliers trying to hold that thing down. And I'd always be careful. I'd go out there to pick them up in the morning because I didn't want the dogs to get in them. Because that's all I needed. And I'd go to grab the thing with a pair of pliers just to pick it up. And sometimes I'd forget. And I'd go to get the food off. And that thing, even though I was holding on to it, it would start to come back on me. I knew the signs. I just wasn't paying attention. I wasn't thinking. And it's just easy. We fall into that. We just go. And then all of a sudden, the thing comes over on you. And that thing hurts like a dickens. I'll tell you what. I'd rather get snapped with a mouse trap every day of the week than a rat trap. Because those things will hurt. Solomon provides this application. He says this: such are the ways of everyone who is greedy for unjust gain. It takes away the life of its possessors. In a rush to be someone or something, we abandon what we believe. We abandon it. Churches today are abandoning in order to gain something. While the world may be impressed, God remains unimpressed. People look and go, well, this is so big, this is this. And people, you know what? God's not impressed. God's not impressed. If we have to compromise and give up something, that's what we've always tried to tell the kids is don't give up something in order to gain something. It never turns out. We think it does, but it never does. And if we compromise on it, and this is just the beginning of what he's trying to teach his son, that it's not as easy as it looks. It's hard to not want to just try to go in there, but we got to stay faithful. What comments or questions do you have as we end today?